Hello. Welcome to another episode of Agony Aunt. And in fact, it's not just any other episode of Agony Aunt, it is our 10th episode. So, to celebrate that, we are listening to a juicy petty revenge episode. And all I want for you today is just to sit back, relax, and live vicariously through the person who wrote and hopefully executed all this wonderful, scrundiloquentious petty revenge. I'll see you on the other side. So, as stated in the intro, we are doing a petty revenge story for our 10th Agony Aunt. Let's get into it. The title reads, "My brother ransacked my room. I cost him a job, prevented him from sleeping, and jacked up his phone bill." What? Okay. Wow. I feel like the response is disproportionate to the inciting incident, but let's see. Home Slice says, "New account for anonymity's sake. Let's set the scene. It's 2010. I had just turned 18 and spent a long summer week away from home enjoying my new freedom to come and go from my parents' house as I pleased. During the week, I crashed at friends' houses, went camping with other friends, video games, and all the cigarettes and tobacco products and snacks me and my friends could afford. My meth-addicted brother, 27, I'll be referring to him as Mac, who thought he was going to make it big in the music scene because of all the different drugs he was willing to do. He thought being on acid made him play as well as Jimi Hendrix because Hendrix did acid. This is relevant because in one of his many drug-induced rampages, Mac was convinced his USB microphone was in my room. So Mac knocks on the door while I'm away, convinces my dad that he was recording in my room and left it in there. It was never in there. He was never there. But my dad was so wrapped around Mac's manipulative finger that he never questioned anything he did. I kept careful inventory of my room because my parents and siblings would steal from me all the time and would try to use my bedroom as a storage room for all sorts of things. Thinking back, his excuse was likely just to steal from me like the rest of my family did. Mac goes into my room, tosses the place like out of a movie scene during one of his notorious benders. Oh my gosh, Mac Wabatu. Why is Mac doing this to his brother? Anyway, let's get back to it. He flips the mattress, empties out every dresser drawer onto the floor. Nothing was left the way I had left it. After all was said and done, I spent 3 days cleaning and reorganizing my room because of how badly this tweaker destroyed everything of mine. Things were broken, clothes were everywhere, bins and boxes dumped on the floor. It was like a tornado had rampaged through a trailer park in Iowa. My dad had heard all of this going on and did nothing. Wabona he, some parents, and enabling bad behavior. I showed my dad the mess. Dad just shrugged at me and says, "He's in his 20s, what do you expect me to do?" How about fucking stop his strung out ass from tossing the place? How about calling him to have him clean this mess up? I replied. He practically ignored me and before walking off says he was looking for his microphone and you need to just deal with it. Going to my mom was no different. She was so terrorized by him that she wanted no part of anything involving him because she felt unsafe. I can't blame her. He became aggressive when challenged on anything he did wrong. Realizing nothing was going to be done by my parents, this was no matter to call the police over since my dad let him in the house, I did exactly what my dad said and I dealt with it. I tried to be diplomatic at first and asked him to come and clean up my room. He laughs, makes fun of me, and says I needed my microphone. I asked if he found it. I know he didn't because I knew it wasn't there. Over in my dad's garage, he never answered. Oh, I know he didn't find it because I knew where it was. It was over in my dad's garage. Okay. He never answered. I scooped up the microphone to hide it even better, stuffed into the rafters of an old shed on the outskirts of the property, inside a large PVC pipe stacked with other pipes. It's where he went to smoke his meth sometimes, so I knew he wouldn't be looking for it there due to the paranoia of being caught by any of us. I gave Mac one final warning to clean it up or else. He again made fun of me. Crybaby bitch, how difficult is it to clean your own room? You're just a lazy piece of shit. Oh my gosh. That last one really talked me because he was a thief and did everything he could to get out of work. Later that night, I decided to do my best Tom Petty impression. I leave my parents' house to sit around a campfire at a friend's house. I waited until I left because then Mac couldn't find me. Neither could my dad. I knew my dad was going to simp for him and defend him yet again. I waited until Mac would have been nice and comfortable at home. I lit my first cigarette of the night and promised myself and nothing would stop my ensuing plan until I smoked the whole pack. I had recently learned how to SMS bomb. At the time, you could add the same contact into your SMS app multiple times for a group chat. I believe it was up to 30 on the phone I had. For every one SMS I sent him, he received 30 in total. I spent hours sending messages to Mac. If I had a cigarette in my mouth, I was text bombing him. I spent from 9 p.m. until 4 a.m. sending Mac thousands upon thousands of texts and picture messages. I have now dropped a Hiroshima-sized text bomb on the fancy BlackBerry he was so proud of buying a week or two before this. For anyone wondering, it was simply a copy and paste text that said, "This stops when my room is clean," and a picture of the mess he made. I alternated back and forth. This took very little effort, and I left him inundated with notifications every 1 to 3 seconds. This effectively DOSE'd, I don't know what that means, his phone into oblivion. It was locked up tighter than a New York subway car. He could not call, text, or even open anything on his phone other than my text messages. Ah, Dad starts finally calling me around 1 a.m. I ignored it. Then my mom calls me and leaves a voicemail for me to call him. Worried it's an emergency, I call Dad back. He picks up the phone screaming at me. His phone locked up and he can't use it. You need to stop this right fucking now. I replied he needs to go and clean up the mess he made of my room right fucking now, or just deal with it like I have to. This argument continues a while longer. The entire time he's defending Mac tooth and nail. Eventually, I broke it to my dad that there was nothing I could do to stop the flow of messages and notifications. I hung up and never brought it up again. After the smoke had cleared, pun intended, I found out Mac had his BlackBerry locked up for 10 days. He wasn't able to respond to a job offer and wasn't smart enough to leave an alternate contact means. The job went to someone else by the time Mac was able to return their call. He was still going to be stuck at the job he loathed for a while longer. His phone plan had a monthly SMS, MMS, and data limit that I absolutely destroyed. The month's bill was over $300. I want to say closer to $400. His live-in girlfriend was also pissed because she had to leave the phone on and plugged into a charger to let it process the messages from my mass messaging campaign the night before. The notifications made the phone unstable, and they were stuck listening to the notification sound for 10 days. They tried stuffing it inside of a blanket, but the phone would get too hot, and they were worried that it would start a fire. On the counter, plugged in to the outlet, it sat, keeping them awake and annoyed constantly. Another 2 months rolled past. I finally decided he could have his microphone back. Kind of. I took it out of hiding and stuffed it in the keyboard box that was always stored in my parents' house. He found it there not too long after and never even apologized for what he did. Not that I ever expected him to. He even bragged about finally finding it. He never went into my room again without permission, out of fear of his phone being locked up again. TLDR, bro ransacked my room looking for his microphone that wasn't there. I sent him literally thousands of texts that made his phone unstable. I cost him a job, 10 days of sleep lost to constant notifications, hundreds of dollars on a phone bill, and terrible home life with girlfriend because of all of that. I also hid his precious microphone for an additional 2 months before giving it back. Boom! Edit number 1. My browser glitched out. The first paragraph spacing was all over the place after the massive text lump. Okay. Edit number 3. The phone details. Wow, this makes me feel old. At the time, texting cost people to send and receive. I had one of the very first unlimited texting plans because I spent a stupid amount of money on T-Mobile Sidekick to be able to get that perk. So once the deluge of messages surpassed his text data limit on BlackBerry, it cost him more and more penalty charges as he received SMSs and MMS messages. How it remained locked was the fact that it couldn't be used due to me overloading the phone itself with messages. The best way I can describe it is, in more general terms, is that if the same thing would happen if you were trying to send 10,000 page Word document to a home grade printer, you were forced to let it print all 10,000 pages before you could print anything else, even if you unplugged it and plugged it back. Okay, those are the edits, that's the update, and what a wow. You know what? I would like to take back my previous statement. The response, and maybe my age is also being exposed here because I knew exactly what Home Slice was talking about when he was saying, that the phone locked up with the messages. And I think I had a phone that you could also add the same number multiple times in a broadcast message. Yeah, and MMSs were so expensive. They were so expensive. I hated them so much. And even now, like when I get an SMS, I don't even open it. Like, I'm not interested. But back in the days, SMS was the future. And low-key still is when, I don't have data. So I'd never say get rid of SMS, but yeah, no, it's not my first choice. Again, another story. Like a lot of these Am I the Asshole stories, I'm seeing parents who are not, showing up for their kids. There's, I think, one of our first Am I the Asshole stories where the pregnant, yes, our first Agony Aunt episode where we had the pregnant sister, right? And how the parents were low-key enabling the pregnant sister by not putting their foot down and almost being, her victims now, right? Where they were even afraid to participate in their hobbies now because of her. And I had implied that maybe it was indicative of like a larger issue, something that might have been present like before she fell pregnant. And then we also had the other episode with, the parents who are in an abusive relationship, and the mother keeps trying to set up the daughter and not considering her safety. We also have the other episode with even the contraceptives, right? And buying condoms for a niece and nephew. And why exactly would the sister be mad about that? You know what I mean? Is she just upset that she didn't, the opportunity to have that conversation with with her daughter herself was taken away? Um, or does she think that like pushing abstinence is the only answer here? Do you get what I mean? Um, I don't know. But yeah, it's coming up quite often that like, parents aren't always showing up for their kids in the way that they should be. Um, and yeah, it's really unfortunate. Because as much as the mother might be scared of Mac, right? Where is that instinct to protect the other child? Like the self-preservation and the protection are kind of not at a they're not at good levels at this point. And then on top of that, you have the father who is an enabler, basically. So yeah, this is a very tricky situation, but I'm glad that you took things into your own hands. And I think that speaks to many of the previous Agony Aunts episodes where we talk about, like, you know what I mean, speaking up for yourself, getting the help that you need. And if the people around you aren't willing to accommodate you, then you have to accommodate yourself. You need to carve out that space for yourself. And it would be nice, if people could just like open up the room for you, right? And shift over and do what they need to do to accommodate you. But it's not a prerequisite of you having space, right? Space isn't necessarily given to you, you take the space. And I think even when we consider sort of the language that we do talk about, that we use when we talk about space, right? It is very possessive. Um, so we need to sort of have that energy, right? To possess the space, to be in full possession of ourselves, and to have no shame, about the type of space that we require, that we need, to feel comfortable, to feel free, not to step on anybody's toes, right? And not to cause harm, um, but to allow ourselves the freedom that we need to shine and to live our best lives, right? And that requires making that space, being proactive. And as much as, yes, I'm going now down a Motivation Monday um, rabbit hole, I do think that in this situation, it's amazing that the brother was like, you know what? People stay stealing from my room this whole time. And sometimes you do need to just kill that one rat and leave it in the middle of the room for 2 minutes for the other rats to see that, like, this is what you're about. You know what I mean? Because then you only have to do it once. And then you never have to do it again, because then now everybody understands that this is a boundary that you are not going to tolerate being crossed. And sometimes you do sort of have to take these quote unquote extreme actions to prove that point, because people, don't want to just respect your boundaries when you communicate them clearly. And as much as like it is a problematic saying, it is something that I do sometimes, refer to quite a lot when I find myself in such situations, when I see them happen, which is those who don't hear must feel. I'm going to tell you the first time. And if you don't want to hear it, then you're just going to have to suffer the consequences of not hearing me. Do you get what I mean? Because I'm not going to sit here and repeat myself again and again and again. Like maybe I'll say it the first time and then rephrase it the second time, because, I'm going to account for the fact that maybe I failed to communicate. But then after that, I'm just like, no, you're failing to understand, or you're unwilling to understand. So let me demonstrate. Do you get what I mean? And I think this is definitely what happened. Home Slice definitely followed the steps, spoke to the dad, spoke to the mom, spoke to the brother, and everybody, wasn't interested. in respecting his space and respecting his boundaries. So the next step is to then make them all feel. Do you get what I mean? And I doubt that they have that problem again moving forward. So I think it was effective. Was it petty? Yes. But what other suggestion would you have for this person to put a stop to this behavior? Do you get what I mean? If you guys have other suggestions, then put them down below. But, I don't think that you can necessarily tell someone how they should react to being offended or how they should react to having a boundary crossed, especially when their first reaction was a calm sort of communicating, like, guys, please help me, please intervene, I need help. And nobody wanted to help them. So now you want to say, well, yes, we didn't help you, but still, you should have known. How about you should have just not, crossed that boundary? How about you should have helped me when I asked for help? And instead you told me to deal with it myself, and I did. And now again, you take issue with it. So what exactly do you want here? Because I know what I want. I want you bitches out of my room. So yeah, shout out to them. And this was a very satisfying petty story, and I love it. So as you know, we will sprinkle in a few petty revenge stories if we have any short episodes. I'd like to keep it around 20 minutes, like between 15 and 20 minutes per episode. So if I find that, an episode is maybe just going to be 10 minutes, then I'll pick a short petty revenge. But I do think that maybe every 10 episodes we find a nice long petty revenge story and really just feel warm and fuzzy inside and live vicariously through the people who are brave enough to get their revenge. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day. I hope that we've helped you hop over this hump and gently glide into the weekend, and we will see you next time. Bye. Wasn't that just satisfying, Especially in a family dynamic like that. Obviously, I would have loved for it to, get a lot more nuclear, kind of ruin his life forever type vibes. Not really, but yeah, really. You know what I mean? Anyway, but I do understand that maybe if they still lived with their family or whatever, that they could only go so far before, burning bridges. So shout out to them for really just taking their time to get their revenge, because, sounded like it was sweeter than honey. Anyway, what would you do in this situation? Do you find it oddly satisfying? Was this petty revenge the revenge that you needed to hear about today? Have you scratched that itch, or do you need another petty story? Do you want an even pettier story? Let me know. And who knows, maybe I'll compile the most pettiest stories for our 20th episode. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next week.